Every story we tell is a journey, a thrilling adventure that will keep you hooked from start to finish. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing our community come together from all around the world. And don't forget, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Tomorrow, we have a special story just for you. Trust us, you won't want to miss it. See you on the next adventure. A drunk man burned a royal guard. The response shocked everyone. The evening sun cast long shadows across Buckingham Palace as the last groups of tourists wandered through the courtyard, snapping final pictures before heading off. The air carried a crisp autumn chill, and the usual hum of conversation was beginning to fade. The atmosphere, once lively, settled into a peaceful quiet, until Tyler Lawson staggered into view. At 26 years old, Tyler had perfected the look of a man who had nothing to lose. His leather jacket hung loosely over his frame, the scent of cheap whiskey and marijuana clinging to him like a second skin. His bloodshot eyes scanned the area, landing on a single figure standing perfectly still, the royal guard. He let out a lazy chuckle, swaying slightly as he made his way forward. Sergeant James Carter, the 32-year-old guard, stood tall in his 6-foot frame, his ceremonial rifle held at perfect attention, his uniform immaculate despite the day's long hours. His face remained impassive, his training demanding absolute stillness. But Tyler saw that stillness as weakness. "Look at this guy," he slurred, more to himself than to anyone else. "All stiff, all fancy. Bet you think you're better than the rest of us, huh?" A few remaining onlookers tensed, sensing trouble. Some parents instinctively pulled their kids closer, while others glanced around, hoping security would step in. But the guard did not move. He never would, not unless the situation truly required it. Tyler, emboldened by the lack of reaction, dug into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled pack of cigarettes. His fingers fumbled with the lighter for a moment before the small flame flickered to life. He took a long drag, exhaling a thick cloud of gray smoke directly toward the guard's face. "You ain't got nothing to say?" he sneered. "What's the matter, soldier boy? Too posh to talk to a real man?" The off-duty police officer standing nearby stiffened, subtly shifting his position to get a better view. Years of experience told him this wouldn't end with just words. Tyler rolled the cigarette between his fingers, the glowing tip pulsing in the dim light. His drunken smirk deepened. Tonight, he was going to make this guard break his stance. Tonight, he would prove that all this discipline was just an act. He just needed to turn up the heat. Tyler took another long drag from his cigarette, the ember glowing bright against the darkening sky. He exhaled a thick cloud of smoke, watching as it curled around Sergeant James Carter's stoic face. The guard remained motionless, his training demanding discipline beyond what most could comprehend. But Tyler? He saw it as a challenge. He stepped closer, invading Carter's personal space, his smirk growing wider. "I bet you think you're tough, huh?" he taunted, voice slurred from cheap whiskey and arrogance. "Standing there, pretending like you don't feel a damn thing." The last few tourists had begun moving away, sensing the dangerous shift in atmosphere. Some stopped to watch, their phones gripped tightly, unsure if they should film or call for help. The off-duty officer in the crowd moved even closer, his instincts screaming that this was escalating fast. Tyler flicked his half-burned cigarette, the ash landing dangerously close to the polished black boots of the guard. Still, no reaction. That's when the anger started to creep in. Tyler hated men like this, men who stood tall, who commanded respect just by existing. It reminded him of every rejection, every authority figure that had written him off as nothing. He let out a dry chuckle, shaking his head. "Bet if I knocked this stupid hat off your head, you'd finally move," he muttered. "Or what? You just gonna stand there and take it?" Then, he got an idea. A bad idea. With slow, deliberate movements, he raised the burning cigarette, the embers still pulsing a deep orange. He rolled it between his fingers, letting the heat build, his eyes locked onto the guard's perfectly straight posture. "I wonder," Tyler said, voice lower now, dripping with malice, "what happens if I..." Before he could finish the thought, he pressed the lit cigarette against Carter's cheek. The sizzle of burning skin was immediate. The smell of scorched flesh mixed with the lingering cigarette smoke. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Carter didn't move. Didn't flinch. Tyler's sick grin faltered. He had expected a reaction, a flinch, a curse, something. But nothing happened. And for the first time that night, Tyler felt a sliver of doubt creep into his drunken haze. For a moment, time seemed frozen. The orange glow of the cigarette's ember had already faded, but the damage had been done. The sickening sizzle of burning flesh still lingered in the air, mixing with the acrid scent of scorched skin and stale tobacco. Tyler's grin twisted into confusion as he stared at the royal guard's face, expecting to see pain, anger, anything. But there was nothing. Sergeant James Carter remained motionless, his eyes fixed straight ahead, as if Tyler didn't even exist. Not even a flicker of emotion crossed his face. It was as if the burn, the pain, didn't matter. The silence from the crowd was deafening. No one dared to move. Tyler took a shaky step back, suddenly feeling exposed. His fingers flexed at his sides, as if unsure whether to go for another cigarette, or to run. He had pushed too far. He could feel it now. The alcohol in his system wasn't enough to numb the unease curling in his gut. "What's the matter, soldier boy?" he sneered, his voice not quite as steady as before. "That's all you got? Not even gonna react?" Still, nothing. But Tyler had seen the guard's jaw tighten, just barely. A shift so small, most people wouldn't have noticed. But he did. And that's when he knew. That stillness. That wasn't fear. That wasn't helplessness. That was control. A new kind of fear slithered into Tyler's chest, wrapping around his lungs like a vice. He had spent years taunting, fighting, pushing. He knew when a man was about to break. Carter wasn't breaking. No, Carter was waiting. Tyler barely had time to blink before the entire atmosphere shifted. The guard moved. Not the hesitant, awkward step of a man finally pushed past his limits, but the calculated precision of a soldier responding to a threat. It was too fast. Before Tyler could even process what was happening, his entire world flipped upside down. The shift in energy was instant. 1 second, Tyler stood there, smug and confident, his fingers still tingling from the burn he had inflicted. The next, he was airborne. Sergeant James Carter had moved with surgical precision, his years of military training igniting in an instant. He didn't waste time with anger. There was no hesitation. No wasted motion. His left boot pivoted, his weight shifting just enough to generate momentum. Then, with the controlled power of a soldier trained in close-quarters combat, his leg snapped forward, striking the cigarette pack still dangling from Tyler's fingers. The pack launched into the air, flipping end over end before hitting the pavement with a soft, almost mocking thud. The entire courtyard held its breath. Tyler stumbled back, his fogged-up brain struggling to process what just happened. His bloodshot eyes darted between the crushed cigarette pack on the ground and the guard standing before him, unshaken, unwavering, unstoppable. For the first time that night, Tyler felt sober. "What the?" he started, but before he could finish, Carter moved again. Faster than a striking snake, the guard's boot came down, not on Tyler, but on the cigarette pack, crushing it into the stone courtyard. The crack of crumbling tobacco and paper was louder than it should have been, like the final blow of a gavel sealing a man's fate. Tyler's mouth opened in disbelief, his hands clenching into fists. His entire body tensed, some deep, primal part of him realizing that he had made a mistake, a big one. But he wasn't about to back down. "You," his voice wavered. "You're not allowed to move." He pointed an accusing finger, his confidence suddenly cracking. "You're supposed to just stand there." Carter didn't flinch. Instead, he did something worse. Without a word, he shifted his weight and stomped down on Tyler's hand. A sharp, crushing pressure pinned Tyler's fingers against the pavement, not enough to break bones, but enough to send a shockwave of searing pain through his wrist. Tyler screamed. The crowd gasped. And just like that, the predator had become the prey. Tyler's scream cut through the night air like a siren. His body twisted as he tried to yank his hand free, but Carter's boot held firm, pressing him against the cold stone courtyard. A ripple of disbelief and awe swept through the crowd. No one had ever seen a Queen's Guard move like this. Tourists who had expected a silent, unshakable statue now found themselves witnessing a force of discipline and controlled power. "You," Tyler wheezed, his breath coming in short gasps. "You can't do this." Carter didn't speak. He didn't have to. His expression remained neutral, his body perfectly controlled, as if nothing had happened at all. The only difference was the burn on his cheek, a fresh, angry reminder of what had just transpired. The air between them crackled with tension. Tyler, for all his bravado, was breaking. The alcohol in his system couldn't mask the reality of what had just occurred. "Somebody do something," he shouted, looking around frantically for support. But there was none. The same people who had laughed at his taunts were now staring at him with a mix of disgust and quiet satisfaction. The off-duty cop who had been watching from the shadows finally stepped forward, his stance firm, his badge now visible. "Assault on a Queen's Guard," he announced, his voice calm and authoritative. "That's a serious offense." Tyler's face paled. "No, wait, He shook his head, his bravado crumbling. "He attacked me. You saw it." The officer crossed his arms. "What I saw," he said, his tone razor-sharp, "was a man deliberately burning a member of the military with a lit cigarette. And what I saw next was an appropriate response." The tourists murmured in agreement. The maintenance workers, the mothers clutching their children, the students who had recorded everything on their phones, all had seen the truth. The game was over. The handcuffs clicked as the officer grabbed Tyler's wrist, pulling him up with zero sympathy. "You've had your fun," the cop muttered. "Now it's time to see how funny it is when you explain this to a judge." As Tyler was led away, Carter resumed his post, silent, unwavering, unshaken. The burn on his cheek still stung, but the lesson had been taught. And Tyler would never forget it. What do you think about this intense moment? If you were in the crowd that night, how would you have reacted? Do you think the Queen's Guard handled the situation perfectly, or would you have done something differently? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one and love hearing your thoughts. And don't forget, respect isn't optional, it's earned.